I think Sajay put a couple of items on the list there, and then he can't make it today. So we'll see if we can push his items, the one item he had specific to him, to the end. Hey, Jason.
How's it going?
Today happens to be Container Plumbing Days, and Mike Brown is on stage right now, so he will not be attending. Being on stage is always the worst for scheduling.
Yeah, that'd be a real serious flex to join the OCI call from your presentation.
That it would be. Hey there, Amy. Any big announcements, or are you just making sure we're behaving?
I just haven't been here for a bit, so I figured I'd drop in. And I also owe you a document for the meeting at KubeCon. So I will take care of that while we're all here. Hooray.
Oh.
Mostly because like we usually do like a separate HackMD to be able to like have everybody just like everything we need to be able to talk about, and then we'll pull like notes back into the main. So watch the space for more.
Sounds good. Do we have things that are did he already? Sajay might have pulled that out because I had already documented that we merged that one. Oh, it's just down below. On the KubeCon, do we have people here that are going to be attending? I see one nod.
Yeah, looking at calendars, and it is over on the OCI calendar. It's the 19th. And it's going to be stupid early for the people in the US, but it's going to be normal time for like people up in Amsterdam. So,
Well, for everybody doing that without me, have fun. And I will just wake up stupid early.
I mean, it's a 5:30 a.m. meeting for Pacific time. It'll be a lot of fun.
That's not bad at all for the East Coast. Because that's 8:30 in the morning. I can do that. I feel bad for the West Coast.
All right, that was all my items. Sorry, continue on with your bad selves.
No worries. It gave us a minute to make sure everybody had a chance to show up here. I still see people blinking in and out here. So I think that's about quorum. So we can go ahead and get this thing started. I do see the warning that distribution spec was merged. I was going to hit that one up later on. We can talk that, or we can talk the 1029 either way, whichever one people think is more of a priority.
I mainly just wanted to announce that it was merged. I don't think there's any more,
Yeah.
I mean, unless people want to discuss, but mainly I was like, yay, it's done.
I'm happy to see it merged. I wanted to discuss how that one plays with 999 in terms of they were both removing the artifact manifest from different specs. And so does this mean that we should be pushing forward on 999 a little quicker?
1029, you mean?
999 and image spec.
Yeah, sorry. The item that I added to the top was the warning header specifying that there is a warning header has merged, not
393. I thought you posted 383.
Do you know these numbers off the top of your head?
No, it's just listed down farther in the meeting agenda.
It's magic.
He just knows what he's doing. It's crazy. Yeah, I'm happy to shut up and talk about actual things. I just wanted to announce that merged.
No, that one was really awesome. I'm pushing Docker right now because clearly Docker is doing stuff that's got some people's attention lately. And so I'm pushing them to see if they want to adopt this on their side and try to get that out earlier for anything that happens registry related that might be a good way to give end user feedback if they start pulling stuff from repos that aren't being updated or something.
Yeah,
So,
if there's anyone over there, including on this call, that has any contacts on the Docker CLI side that would be interested in implementing the client side of this, I'm super interested in that and would love to help.
Sebastian, who's clearly not here, he did say that he was interested in getting some work on that one over there. So I think that's going to happen. I just don't know time frame.
Awesome.
But yes, they like it. I think their big concern was on the hub side. the place they were going, the source of data they needed to inject the warnings was on the auth server. And so they were going to have to figure out a way to get the data from the auth server to the registry server back. That's on them to figure out in the back end, but that was their concern.
Yeah, I think, yeah. Cool. Awesome. I'm excited
Yeah.
for this to start filtering out to registries and clients. This will be super cool. Super cool.
You're going to be the first project of mine, or first reason of my code that I'm going to actually use the Golang context package for anything other than just a timeout.
I'm honored.
I feel like someone's going to tell me I'm doing it wrong after they see my code, though.
Nah, it's
I
fine.
think I might have missed what the start of the conversation was. Is this about the header on pushing blobs?
This
No,
is the
on-
warning header. So
The
a
warning header?
registry can
Okay.
give you a warning back saying, hey, here's some information about stuff you're pulling you should be aware of, which the Kubernetes people were kind of leading the way with their registry migration to a new registry server. Cool. Well, I think we have chit-chat enough to give everybody a chance to show up. I figure we might want to talk about 1029 first, because that's the one that seems to have the most back and forth amongst the community, which is the first question I was going to throw in there, which maybe should be the last question, is do we want to split this into 2 PRs? Because I thought we were good to go and we were just going to roll forward, and then we saw that the plus OCI was giving some concern to people. And then the second half of this, which I think we probably want to spend more time talking about, is how do we want to structure the media type in the config blob when the config blob is just Scratch? And basically, how do we want to handle that artifact type? Same thing we were talking about before, but we've heard from other folks that the plus OCI media type was not something that they liked. I've seen comments. Let's see, I'm looking through names here. I've seen comments that some folks wanted to add a new artifact type field into the image manifest, either in the image manifest itself or in the config descriptor. That's going to be chaos, but it's clean. So
I wish I don't see Vincent on the call. I think he raised some questions on the PR about the plus OCI, right?
he was the one that had the most concern about that one.
Yeah. I don't know if we can. I don't know. I think we were all in this call at least like comfortable with plus OCI, so I don't know if we can really proceed as a discussion without Vincent here, unless someone wants to take that. I don't know if someone can properly sort of advocate for the position without him.
I'll say that I wasn't thrilled. It's not that I was uncomfortable with it. I just wasn't thrilled, and I can understand the concern about the plus OCI, and that is just another thing to keep track of, and it's slightly mutating the data a little bit in a weird way. So there was reasons to ask questions about it. It was good enough that we didn't have to change too much of anything. And then the conversation went into, let's just add an artifact type field. So that's when we kind of evolved into chaos.
I guess it's sort of a temperature check. Should we just like thumbs up, thumbs down? Like if there was an artifact type field on the root level of the manifest, I think that would make the most sense to me. Is there anyone who would be opposed to that here?
So that's
as
option
a
4.
fallback, to be clear. Like it would be in the refers API, it would check that first and then the config media type.
That's option 4, to throw it right in the image manifest.
Yep.
The reason I threw in option 3 is because there's no JSON change to the spec if we do option 3, which is put it in the config descriptor. We already have an artifact type within the descriptor field. That's the only reason I was suggesting that, is just one less thing to change, one thing to keep a little simpler. But I'm comfortable with either, whatever way people want to do. John, I see you off mute. Did you have something?
Option 3 doesn't seem correct.
Go on.
Just given the current semantics around artifact type, I think option 3 is not the thing we are trying to express. It to me means something other, like different from option 4.
And that's because in the refers API, the index response, the artifact type is the artifact type of the manifest, right?
Right.
And in this case, if we put it in the config descriptor, it's not really describing the artifact type of the descriptor, right? The descriptor's target.
Right. It's
okay.
Yeah, it's kind of backwards.
Yeah.
And when we added the embedded top level media type field to all the manifests, that also kind of set a precedent for maybe adding an artifact type field to manifests. Yeah, I would lean towards 4 as being like the simplest thing that's easy for us to do, that doesn't involve a different standards body. Option 2 is like cute, but I only like it because I came up with it, and I don't know that we really want to do that.
I think I like option 4 from a client implementation perspective as well, is that if we put the guidance for artifact section, artifact should populate the artifact type field, right? It's a little bit simpler for clients, runtimes and non-runtime clients to distinguish. Am I looking at something that's purporting to be more of an image or more of an artifact by checking the existence of that field? It's not going to be perfect, of course. We have some legacy artifacts in registries today, but I think that's simpler to me.
Yeah, I mean, the only place it gets a little more complicated is registry implementation, but we're already asking them to change, like they have to write new code to do this. So I think it is fine to have an additional string check. If artifact type is not set, then look at config type. That's pretty straightforward to me.
I do want to hear from other people who have already done some implementations that now need to change their implementations. So thinking like Toddy, Ramkumar, anybody that's gone through the effort of already implementing this stuff.
I would rather have Sajay here because he has the exact kind of details on the implementation, but he's not on the call. I can ping him and ask him to comment on that.
Yeah, I know when he and I were chatting, his big concern was that it took so much negotiating and effort getting everybody upstream to coordinate on this. And now we're going back to the well and saying, okay, we need to change everything again.
Well,
it's not a huge change, but it's still going back and asking for a change.
I don't think it's worth seconding that, but yeah. In essence, we all gave up. So whatever you guys say, right?
we're all giving something up here. I'm going to put an example in the notes just so we have something to work from. Just because I'm doing code formatting, it's easier.
I just put in Zoom chat because maybe that everyone wants to speak up, but if anyone has a strong preference on either option 2, which is plus OCI media type on the config .media type, or option 4, finding artifact type in the image manifest, it would be wonderful just to do a quick temperature check to see if there's any. Does anyone prefer option 2 over 4, I guess? And I pre-populated the poll with votes for both.
Or the actual number is 0 votes for 2.
That's right. But current sample size is 1 vote. Oh, not everyone has access to be able to react to chat comments. Is that what I'm hearing, John?
Yeah.
We've got some hands raised.
I tried.
Hey, Jesse.
Yeah. Should I just start talking?
Yeah, I'd love to hear you talk.
Hi, John. So, I guess like to follow up on Toddy's kind of funny remark, but also true. Like we did give up. What I'm curious about in the last couple of weeks, why do we need a change like that? Like if we're talking about actually putting a new field in the image manifest, like wouldn't clients then potentially start using that? And like, don't we have like this kind of some of the same problems that everybody had with a new media type to begin with? Like I thought, and I've been checked out for a couple of weeks, so I apologize, but like I thought we had sort of land on, okay, let's codify what's in open containers artifacts and call it a day. This doesn't feel like that.
This doesn't have the same problem of a new media type because we've got the existing media type, so the registry knows how to read it still. So it's just an extra field like adding the subject into the image spec before that registries that don't know what to do with it will just pass it through.
Well, if the registry is truly 1.0 compliant, which Toddy has shown that about 80% of them aren't. Okay. I guess, yeah, I don't really have an informed opinion. Sorry. I just wanted to kind of validate Aaron saying, hey, everybody speak up. We don't really all have something to say, probably.
Yeah,
So-
I'm with you, Jesse. I'm kind of like going with the flow right now and just tell us what to do, right?
Yeah, I just want to refer as API in a spec so I can release this thing because we built it and
Yeah.
it's just sitting there.
I
So would love it.
For me, we are breaking a lot of things and a lot of people are unhappy, right? I can tell you, my whole team is unhappy with this back and forth and add this field, remove this field. It's just not productive at all. And everything was ready, and all the registries that actually went on the path with the artifact manifest, they were like ready to release it. And now, anyways, sorry, I don't want to actually derail the conversation.
Okay, we're looking at a,
I'm just getting an example up there so people know what they're saying, but Ron Kumar, I think you still have your hand up.
you might, is he muted? Oh, no.
He's
Ron
not
Kumar,
muted,
are
but
you
we
there?
can't hear him.
Brandon, can you say again the issue that we were looking at? I forgot it right now.
We are on, not the warning header, 1029.
1029. Thank you.
Ron Kumar, I see your hand. I see you're not on mute, but we can't hear you. And if you get your mic working, feel free to interrupt me at any time. For right now, sorry, mic problems are the story of our lives. So I think what we're saying is add a new artifact type up top. I do have an open question here. What do we want this to be set to? And then the rest of this is just what we already had before: annotation, subject, layers. Does that sound right to everybody? This is the double curly. And I need emojis or chats or something that's not a video thing. Since I'm sharing a screen, I can't tell any reactions here.
So I think were we to standardize an artifact type field, I think the question marks there could be a OCI standardized scratch media type, right? Like we could do vnd.oci.scratch JSON or something. Right.
I was thinking either Scratch or some kind of artifact, Scratch or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah. I think I don't know if anyone here on the call actually has any preference. So I think if you just wrote something down and some put that in the PR, I think everyone here would be okay with that. Unless if anyone isn't, I'm sure they can speak up.
What I'm used to is I'll take that approach and then invariably someone will come up later on and say, I have an opinion.
I have an
So-
opinion.
Jump in with your opinion, John.
If we want to optimize for, say, broadest compatibility with existing software, it might make sense to just use the normal config media type for this. So that if a registry behaves properly by ignoring unknown fields, but behaves improperly by only accepting certain config media types, then we can still leverage that registry or software or whatever. But like if we only care about things that are technically correct and not practically useful, I would say like this could just be application/JSON.
I don't want to say that it's OCI image.json because then we're telling runtimes that this is an image. But I don't mind setting it to a fixed value. And so having it OCI.artifact.scratch or something. Having a fixed value there allows anybody that is being very explicit on what they accept to accept that one config media type, and that includes all artifacts at that point.
Sure.
Would that mean that then 1.1 would promote refusing other config media types? Like, would we? Because I know like open container / artifacts was never part of 1.0, but it's become like, I think that was kind of the root of the argument was like, everybody does this, we might as well just do it. So now we're saying like, everybody does this and they better stop. Or would it be like either or?
I'm being a bit fatalistic. And as much as I wish everybody was going to change their registry, I know someone is just not, no matter what we do.
There may be room for like a should that describes what everyone is doing already, basically, and a must that describes, hey, if you refuse to like play along with this scheme, then we're adding this must so that you're technically not in compliance with 1.1 because you don't support this Scratch string that we made up that means nothing. I do want like what everyone has been doing to be valid in whatever we define. But there's also,
Yeah.
you know, people who aren't playing along registry side who are too conservative with their JSON strings. I don't know if it's worth having some, you know, dancing around that.
Right. So I mean, I think this goes directly to the point that I was trying to make all along, which is the backward compatibility guarantee in a storage specification means that artifacts have a life in the future, not that new artifacts can be pushed to old storage mechanisms. That seems to be what we over-rotated on, is making sure that a 1.1 client won't break when it tries to push to a 1.0 registry. I lost the argument in trying to say that's not an actual problem. This would be, right? Taking 1.0 artifacts that set config media type and migrating them to a 1.1 registry and they break because we don't allow config media type to be anything else. That has to be a must, I think. Or we just hand wave and say, well, that was never in the spec anyway, and we just break people, which doesn't seem right. So I think it should be a should at least. Like, does that make sense?
I agree with that. We should have some should language around like
Yeah.
1.0 artifacts.
Yeah, I would say at a minimum. Yeah, because yeah, in the absence of a spec, people adopted that as an ad hoc spec, right? Especially since it was in the same repos. Very confusing, which we all agree with. I just really, I mean, I feel like that is, well, I said it and it's recorded, so there you go. That was like kind of my golden elevator pitch for what are we doing here, but that's okay. So I would say, yeah, I think that's at a minimum, we need to have some should language in there.
So first I'm going to check to see if Ram Kumar has a working mic, because I saw him bouncing in and out. I see him off mute. But we still don't hear you.
Amy, did you see VBATs? I don't see him.
I saw him
I
join.
think
Oh.
VBATS is like the open container host.
Oh,
Yeah.
hi VBATs.
So that was the second that I was going to pass to. So Ram Kumar, feel free to interject at any time if you get the mic working. But VBATs, welcome.
Hey, y'all.
We are discussing the alternative to getting rid of the plus OCI.
Okay. I feel like the last thing we were talking about in the busy Slack channel is probably still holds for me. If y'all have already gone over that before I joined.
So what we kind of went over was we had three options, which was my original option that nobody liked, which was that, hey, scratch is null. So media type can be anything. Everybody said no. Okay. Second option, we were thinking a few weeks ago, plus OCI. That was the one that I wasn't thrilled about, asked you about, and you said no. So, okay. I threw out the option artifact type could just be done on the config descriptor. That got nixed today, just people saying that doesn't really fit in the config descriptor. It's really defining what the image manifest is, not what the config descriptor is. And so we're going down to saying, let's put it on the image manifest, which turns it into a manifest that looks like this, where we have artifact type. The config media type is probably going to be some static string for this scenario. It doesn't mean that other people pushing their own artifacts wouldn't have their own string in there, where Helm charts have a config. Cosign would have their config for a signature potentially. But if they don't have anything for the config and they're just saying instead of scratch value, they've got the option to define the artifact type. Does that go along with where you're referring VBATs?
I think so, because to me, okay, so just real briefly, like even on like when we were iterating on that over the last month or two, having some kind of a predefined media type, whatever it's called, and here you've got like scratch OCI, whatever, OCI scratch, that's fine. I think defining that is probably the important part. The plus JSON at the end is just because it is technically a JSON document, and plus OCI just didn't make any sense there. Not saying no to it, it just seems like a misuse of it. And so having these fields teased out a little bit further, I guess, is fine. So then you have the media type. So in this situation, the media type and artifact type sitting next to each other. Media type is describing is a self-describing field of like what the document itself is. And then artifact.
Are you asking this one at the top?
The one that was
image
on your
manifest?
screen, just no, I had to walk away.
This one. This media
It worked.
type has to be there because we have to have the media type for every manifest we push.
Correct, because that's self-describing, and then artifact type describes what it's pointing at.
Well,
Correct.
kind of. I think it's slightly more abstract than that, but yeah, basically. Like an artifact with multiple layers. Like I'd say the artifact type is also self-describing, but is more abstract than the JSON structure exactly.
Okay.
Where media type is like JSON parser useful, and artifact type is semantics useful.
Mm-hmm. Because I mean, if that thing is not JSON, then it doesn't need the plus JSON on the end at all. But it's, sure, whatever you're describing a thing.
The key for me is that this artifact type gets pulled up into the refers response. And so if I have 4 different SBOMs, 2 CycloneDX, 2 SPDX, 1 XML, 1 JSON, however they sort it out, I want to make sure that from the top level I can sort out. I could always put it down as an annotation if that was maybe more
Yeah.
sense.
So I guess two things. I like that it's not in the descriptor and making that whole, what is the function of the media type field in a descriptor now overloaded? Because that was seeming like a problematic thing. But what if in this scenario you had more than one descriptor in the layers area? Is it a one-to-one mapping of that artifact value to what's in the layers?
Doesn't have to be. It's
I think
if you had like multiple things in layers, would they all have to be the same media type?
if you have an artifact type of Brandon's metadata, and the layers was metadata for the Docker file, metadata for this, metadata for that. They can be different.
I think it's not the answer there is we're not being prescriptive, right? Is that it's up to the implementation to decide if they
Okay.
register their own media type string, they can do whatever they want in the layers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. That I just wanted to. I don't know if it needs to be clear or if that's intuitive. Yeah, like if somebody's going to blow it up somehow, if that's not the expectation. Okay.
I think my experience with this is we need several examples in the spec of common use cases to make it very clear like how to actually implement this, because I've seen a lot of people just they look at the examples, they say, okay, all data will always look like this, and then code against that. So I think there's 3 or 4 different like uses that we see commonly that we're trying to accommodate, and having those explicit examples would be good.
Yeah, I'm definitely pushing to get examples in there just because, for example, Cosign started saying, here's how we're going to push up SBOMs. And the question quickly came to their side of, okay, if we got a way to push SBOMs over there, is this the proper media types for everybody to do SBOMs? And it's a Cosign specific config media type. So I think I would be much happier if we get something that everybody pushing the CycloneDX, everybody pushing the SPDX uses something that's going to be consistent across all the tools. They're doing the same thing.
Yeah, and I think it's up to those sort of parties to agree if they want to have a common artifact type, and they can reach that consensus. It's not OCI's place to mediate that.
I had a question on, so John made a comment about why don't we just have it be application JSON for the config media type? I would think that we would want should language at some point that just says the size can be 0 and just leave the object as empty. But I feel like I missed some conversation that led us to this like custom null media type here. Like how is that for backwards compatibility?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Issue 1025, we tried was no layers, an empty layer, other different things, a layer of zero size. And we were just getting registries all over the place that failed until we came up and said, let's just do the scratch layer of the double curly bracket. That was the only thing that worked everywhere.
I still have the same question though. Like, these are all registries before a 1.1 spec exists. Like, why can't we define in the specification what we think the behavior should be? And then a registry can implement 1.1 if it wants to.
Because for me, this is defining the fallback scenario of a registry. It doesn't have the artifact manifest. And my hope is that even though we said artifact
Why?
manifest is pulled, that we're going to get in eventually.
I still don't understand why though. Like that implies that not only would it be enforced, but it would also be automated without any control from the user, from the calling context. I just I don't understand this thread of logic that drives us to these backbendy kind of places.
If I was defining a new thing and I wasn't worried about what existing registries were doing, I would be okay with that. But for me, I'm
Good.
defining the thing that I want to work on registries as they are today, and I can't force an upgrade everywhere.
Good scope. The question then, why is 1.1 not a new thing? Why do we see 1.1 as just like a micro version of 1.0? Why isn't, in other words, why are we working on 1.1 and not 1.0.3? Right? If we're that concerned with keeping everything within the scope of 1.0, why bother have a 1.1? This is a simplifying question. This is not a shit-stirring question. I really want to know, because we are going to spend weeks and you will keep finding things like this. This goes back to my original point of like, look, and this is my fault. I worked on storage specs for the first decade of my career. Like, we never thought a forward compliant client would be able to talk to a in the past down rev legacy storage solution. The most important thing is the storage artifacts in legacy are forward portable, so that when you update your storage mechanism, you don't abandon and orphan your data.
But that scenario is exactly what we have in the registry world, which is people will upgrade their clients, but still be talking to 1.0 registries in the field.
That's a client thing. You talk to both. No, that's not what you're talking about. You're talking about clients creating artifacts which are 1.1 compliant and expecting them to work in 1.0 registries. Those are two different things. And I would not say that that would be in scope.
I'm not sure I 100% follow where
I don't mean that to be an argument. I'm trying to clarify. So, okay. So what you were talking about is like fallback, right? And fallback can be automated or it can be manual. But either way, what you're doing is you're saying this client doesn't have what it needs. It will fall back to 1.0 capabilities. If I don't have that and I just create a 1.1 thing, do we expect that to work in a 1.0 registry? The answer should be no, but it seems to be what we're trying to. And here what we're saying is, well, a client can't push something that a 1.0 registry can't handle, which I don't think should matter. I think we should define the spec that we need at 1.1, and then registries will follow it. And those are two kind of different things. Whole bunch of hands went up.
Yeah, I'm not sure which one went up first, but the top on my screen is John Keller.
I just want to make sure I understand like the implications of that versus the reality of end users today of both registries and clients. Would we be required then to ask them to pass a parameter to your Docker build or your co-build or your ORAS push that actually says what version of an OCI spec you want to use to create that end? Because I don't think anybody knows. Most users of these clients today don't have that level of understanding of what's going on.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I think this is the first minor version. But we don't. So this is why I keep harping on this, is I think it's a precedent that we're setting. We need to guide people toward the right way to adopt new features. So, I mean, it's versioned for a reason. If we didn't version it, then it's just like Wild West, and what works and what breaks. And that frankly seems to be what we have in 1.0 right now, but we'll put a pin in that. We can all laugh about it at least. But like, I think that's a really good call out, John. Like how would clients do that? What if, so like right now we see ORAS, notation, cosign are all aware as just 3 candidates. So not favorites. I'm sorry if I left yours out. But like they're all aware of this. And now they have like these switches to be like, oh, we'll use a 1.0 style image or a 1.0 style artifact, or now we'll use 1.1 style. Like they're starting to build some of that in, but it's a little, it's a little ad hoc because the spec isn't out. But that's all evidence of a client being aware and asking its user, what do you want to do? Right? Are you targeting a 1.0 registry? You better use legacy stuff. Otherwise it'll break, right? Versus, the idea that we have to limit the spec to nothing that would ever break. And I think that's kind of the space that we're talking about now. So I think the answer is yes. I think the answer is yeah, like clients have to be aware, right?
Hello. I think largely how we got to this point is my fault, so I feel obligated to say something. But I think why we are at the point of like, okay, let's not break anything ever, let's be 1.0 compatible with this, is that we can. And I think it is better to do that because we can. Bending over backwards doesn't feel good. And I don't like a lot of this, but in terms of like, can we get this working with everything that exists today in a way that's like, let's say 99.9% of registries will support it. That seems like a laudable goal to have so that we can like move on with our lives. I am supportive of making some 1.1 or 2.0 breaking changes to introduce something like an artifact manifest. If with that, we get a better mechanism for upgrade and better mechanism for adopting new features. It's just that, the same, but slightly different such that it doesn't work with the existing clients and registries is a non-starter for me. And so I think because of that, right, because we punted on that to the future, now we're at the point where like, okay, well, let's ship something and we might as well make it work with everything because it can, which is gross, but I think pragmatic. Because and you said at some point, like, we'll define this as 1.1 and registries will adopt 1.1. And I think most will, but I don't think enough will for me not to be annoyed by like random support requests from users who use some outdated version of a registry that they don't have support for, and then I get sad. I'll stop rambling.
The other thing I wanted to piggyback on that, the big part for me is if we can support existing registries, why we have 2 choices to pick from, while we pick the one that we know is going to have problems on some registries, why wouldn't we pick the one that works everywhere? That's the first part. But the second part is from the end user. I don't think there's a way end users know where their content is going to be sent to after they push it to the registry. And so you push it up to one registry, it can get copied to a dozen other places. So if you get all the APIs in there, you can do all the checks and say, I know my registry has 1.1. You don't know that all the downstream use cases after you send it up there is going to still work with that. It can get copied somewhere else.
Bro, and I kind of going backwards. I agree with you, Brandon. This happens in block copies right now, right? You have a lot of file systems that are NVMe aware and others that are used to spinning Rust, and they are laid out totally different. And you move your block copy somewhere and stuff can go sideways real easy. I think that is down to just kind of part of being using a complex system. So don't disagree with you. I just don't prioritize it. And I would say to John, and this is a me for posterity's sake, and then I'm going back to the giving up posture that I started at. for posterity's sake, completely agree with everything you said as well. I just don't characterize artifact media type in 1.1 as a breaking change. I think that is a big difference between how we see this, because I don't think new features in a forward-moving specification can be considered breaking if they're not supported in a implementation of a down rev version. And that's really what we're saying is like, I got the new shiny, but it won't work in the old dingy. So it's breaking change. What would be a breaking change to me is what we were talking about, where if we forced artifacts using image media type to have a config media type that is a specific string only. That would be a breaking change in that 1.0 style ad hoc artifacts could not move to a 1.1 registry. They would, you know, so we would orphan, we would abandon data. That to me would be a breaking change. But that's it for posterity.
Yeah, I don't know if I said breaking change. I probably did at some point.
You
but
did.
In my mind, the backwards incompatibility is my problem, and maybe that definition is also not correct the way I use it. But it not being backwards compatible with existing clients and registries is my problem with it.
If completely, you've been very fluent. I get it, and I am not saying I'm right and you're wrong. I'm saying it's how I see it, and you see it a different way. You're completely right. It's not backward compatible in that way. I don't think of backward compatibility that way. But yeah, I think, yeah.
Thank you. Aaron was next.
Yeah. I think the way that I look at it as a prospective client, not in the hypothetical, we want to use where I work, OCI 1.1, whatever shape that takes. What I care about is what Jesse is talking about is if we look at issue 1025, right, that doesn't truly capture all of the possible permutations of putting artifacts in different registries, right? It tests sort of like we tested a tiny subset of the possible values in all of these fields. And there's no guarantee that any of these registries will accept mycompany.foo.bar plus JSON, right? As a config. And what matters to me as an implementation is specifying that OCI 1.1 will essentially require that degree of compatibility of conformance. So whether that takes place in image manifest or artifact, you know, that's I have relented on that, but I think that is my point in PR 1030, which actually is later in the docket. I don't think we'll get to it today, but I think that is what matters to me is I cannot rely on an OCI 1.0 registry to support the products that I'm building. And that's because there's just no way to exhaustively test all of the registries that exist today with all the possible permutations, right? But if OCI 1.1 specifies that arbitrary media types have to be accepted, then I can say to my customers that if your registry supports OCI 1.1, then our product supports your registry, right? And that's I think the value of specifying that, you know, I think we're doing a lot of compromises to support existing registries so that the lift is smaller. That's fine, but I do want to make sure that we support that baseline that I can build a product on. That's what matters to me. And if a customer says my OCI 1.0 registry doesn't support your product, I say, well, tell your company to update your registry. That's I think our stance.
Patty?
Yeah, I want to second actually what Jesse said. So I never saw 1 point or artifact manifest as breaking change, right? And we worked on the clients and we actually found a way to really support both registries, the old one and the new one. The only thing that actually, Brendan, I remember you had is like copying between old and new one and automatic copying. That is the kind of the only broken scenario. And we are doing all this kind of work to really make that easy, but that doesn't mean that the clients cannot do it, right? And we had implementation where the client was able to copy between a new and old and back and forth. Of course, you remember we wanted to have also this addition of, okay, what do you support? So we can make that easy. But it was possible. And for me, once again, so artifact manifest was additive change. And it was, if you are 1.1, you support the artifact manifest, and your client knows what it is talking to. So we even implemented the client to do automatic kind of fallback to the registry. It was a bunch of work that we spent actually to do it, and there were a couple of registries that were not supporting it just because they were sending error messages that were like very random. I don't know whether you remember that discussion that we had at the time. And it's like, once again, those registries, they do not comply with OCI, right? And we may never actually get them to comply with OCI because, and again, so I just wanted to put it on the record. And once again, I'm seconding Jesse here. That wasn't a breaking change. Clients were able to do this work and talk to each registry. It was much simpler. Copying was possible as long as the old registries, well, okay, John.
It is not possible.
Okay.
It's the crux of why like this all started, is that it's not possible. Otherwise, if it were, I would not have this argument.
And I'm explaining why it was not possible, not because actually we did something wrong and the artifact manifest was wrong. It was not possible for other reasons, not for the reasons that we are discussing here. And that is my opinion on the problem. Okay. I just wanted to.
It's not possible for like the shape of the data problems, not even registry implementations. Like it's logically impossible to do because people want to sign bytes. And if you do a conversion of the signed thing, those bytes change. And so you can't portably move signed objects around without breaking the signature.
That is true. Yeah, I agree with that. The signatures will be broken if they are moved. Because
if that weren't the case, then I think I would not argue about this. But like that,
okay,
you know, that's my number one use case.
Okay, I accept that. I agree.
John, do you have anything else for us? Just that.
Me? I don't know. I'm sorry, everybody. I'm trying to make everything good, and it seems like everyone's mad, and I'm doing my best.
So I'm looking.
Sorry, Brandon. I'm gonna jump your raised hand, Brandon. John, that's like the third time you've apologized. You really don't. I mean, I'm speaking for myself. You really don't need to do that. Like that's we're all doing this, and we're gonna follow a majority quorum kind of vibe. And Toddy and I aren't even mad. We gave up. That's what we said. So, you know, we're gonna get spicy though if you keep apologizing. Stop apologizing.
I'm also giving up. So I think we got a pretty level footing.
So in the spec defined by attrition here, as we all give up, if I update my PR to put the artifact type at the top to define a static config value here, and that is the example for when someone's pushing something where the artifact type is pointing to like one or a couple layers there they're controlling, and they don't, when they have no custom config, when their config is just a scratch media type. If I define that as our example, are people comfortable with that, or are people going to push back and say, no, we still need to loop back around to these other questions? I'm trying to get a temperature check from the room of whether or not I should go through the effort of implementing this or not.
Is this pointed at image or distribution? I'm sorry.
It's going to be a lot of image spec.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's anything in distribution that needs to change.
So as long as it's accompanied
correction.
with like a, oh, sorry, go ahead.
It's both. The change to the spec is in image spec, but the usage of it, distribution, is going to need to be updated to tell it how we're parsing the media type to pull it up to an artifact type. So artifact type was originally just the config media type, and now it's going to be a conditional it is the config media type unless you have an artifact type, and then you use artifact type if it exists.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense. So I think we'd have to see them both, and then we can bring it to GitHub.
Yeah. So that goes to my other comment, which was I should just break this PR up. I'm going to close 1029. I'm going to reopen a new one with just my nits. I had a few small things in there that just weren't related to any of this stuff. And so I'll get that updated. And then I'll open a new PR with everything we've been talking about with basically the guidance and the new artifact type field and everything in there together. And then I don't know who had their hand up next. Toddy, you're at the top of my page though.
I actually have very small question before the end. Maybe John has more, but my question is, do we have any ETA for when the spec will be released, right? Or I'm pretty sure that a lot of people are interested about that. And I know that there are long discussions, but can we put some time bomb on this? And
I think it depends on how many meetings we have like this, where we keep going back around in circles over and over again. I really want to go faster.
Forever, you know that. And as Jesse and I said, we are giving up. Just can we get it out?
The open source way, we go when we're ready. John, jump on in.
So yeah, a question for you on the last part there of pulling the artifact type up to the refers API. Would you have to use both the artifact type and the media type of the layers in order, like if you wanted to filter your query based on like, I only want to see Cyclone DX XML artifacts, not all of the Cyclone DX objects?
That's where we need to clarify in our examples of what to define there. The stuff I'm going to put in distribution is just saying when you run the refers API call, or when you're building the fallback tag that's representing the refers API response, that you first pull the artifact type if it exists. And otherwise, if that doesn't exist, you use the config media type. And that goes into the artifact type within the descriptor within the refers API response.
I think I'm saying I could envision a use case where you'd want to use both because they're different.
We've only got one field to pull up. If you've got more complicated use cases there, which a lot of us do, I'm there with you. That's where we have the annotations getting pulled up. And so if you had a fingerprint for your signing key and you wanted to include that up here, you can do that. If you had a timestamp for when the last vulnerability scan ran, you can put the timestamp in there and then someone could query for the last vulnerability scan to run. We deferred all that into the annotations. Jesse, is it a new question or still?
Yeah, I didn't know if John was still going. Yeah, we're at a time stop. I mean, we're out of time, but I don't know. I mean, I don't know why. I guess my first question is, why are we doing this? Like, we never did answer that. And then now I hear that it feels to some people like we're going around in circles, which makes me even ask it more. Like we were just prepared to go like, fine, config media type, that's the artifact, cool. Why are we doing this if it feels like it's going in circles and it does, like, what's the problem we're solving here? And why do people feel like they're giving things up? Like
my circles comment was that I felt like we were starting to re-argue why we got rid of the artifact manifest. And I didn't want to re-argue
we
that all
did.
over again.
We did that for posterity's sake, because we basically said, we give up, just we'll do what you tell us to. And it was like, oh no, we're all giving things up. No, we're not. Like, and that's fine. That's fine. But for posterity, I wanted to make it clear, I just want to ship refers. Like, I'm fine with config media type. So why is this? Again, I think that's the third time now I'm asking. I don't know what the answer is. Why do we need artifact type?
I think I can answer this for you. I believe the config media type describes the config document, right? Historically, this is the case today. If we're overloading that to also be the artifact type of the document, then that media type needs to be defined such that like it's a JSON object.
Got it.
And also a meta object. And some people, including myself, don't love that.
Mhm.
I'm fine with it, but I don't love it. And so having these two things be separate means that like we're not flagrantly making the descriptor media type thing. Like that's why I proposed a plus OCI syntax suffix for the media type. It's like, hey, this is like a JSON object I'm pointing to, but in the context of a different document, I'm describing the semantics of that document, which is like a very strange suffix to have, but it would solve that problem. But also adding
Yeah, yeah.
artifact type nicely solves that problem.
Okay.
I'm going to take John's place and apologize because I missed that question, Jesse. And so, yeah, what John said,
Mhm.
absolutely. We had
Totally cool.
two different outputs of this digest point to one thing. This
Yeah,
media type was
would make
supposed to point to
sense.
that digest, but was supposed to point to artifact type. And
So we're fixing our kind of ad hoc spec overloading what this thing is. We want to fix that, which totally makes sense. Okay.
we want
cool.
to say this media type points to whatever that digest is, regardless, no matter what.
Mhm. Okay, cool. Thanks.
I apologize.
No, you're good.
All right.
So did we land at option 4 then?
I think
Is
we
that where
landed
we
option
landed?
4.
Yeah,
I will
think
get
so
some
too.
work on
Okay.
that. I will get
Cool.
a couple PRs. That'll be my fun after hours project here. And thanks
Okay.
everybody for another hour. I think we made some progress as much as we went around the circle a few times.
Thanks again.
Bye, folks.
Thanks,
Take care.
folks. Have a nice day.
Bye-bye.